continue. You probably have heard about Archipelago or not, but you for sure have heard about Europeana data model. We have a workshop playground. It's named https studio.archipelago.nyc. There's also like a link there to the Archipelago deployment repository. Deploying Archipelago is something that anyone can do at home or at work. It takes like 10 to 20 minutes to get started and includes all the code and everything to run. So it's quite enjoyable. And those are our emails. And you can also like write us anytime or send us postcards or memes or emojis. Let's get started with this. Some links and facts. So right now, the current stable branch of Archipelago is the 1.0.0 release candidate 3. We're almost into release candidate 3, sorry, 2, almost into release candidate 3 period. After release candidate 3, we're going to go for the final version. But our release candidates are very heavy on features. So I could actually say it's almost like version 2. But because we have a very stable roadmap and a very ambitious roadmap, we have like stayed in the release candidate level. Archipelago is GNU version 3, so it's open source. It can be modified, adapted, used, and reused. It can be packaged and sold if you want, or like printed, whatever you want to do with it. Archipelago has also like an advisory board. It has community members from the repository world, from different places, from IIIF to like universities to like museums and archives. It has a lovely and caring community. It's not a huge community, but it's an active one with a lot of use cases. And it spans from oral history to institutional repositories to museums and smaller archives. And Archipelago is a system built on top of Drupal. And it empowers Drupal, but also extends heavily Drupal. There's like this demo repository named Archipelago NYC that you can like look at. There's also a main playing ground that you can like log in, you can request an account and play there. We have a Google group where you can like make questions, share your concerns, come with use cases, etc. There's a technical roadmap that has sometimes very beautiful children books, images, but also explains exactly where you are going, right? And has also active development repos. You can also see all the specs and features. I'm going to try to show you most of the things today, but it's very rich in features. So probably it's better to read it there. For this workshop, so you already have the link to the playground, right? If you didn't have the account, please let us know. The account you got is using a role that is like a certain level of limitations. It's not like an admin role, right? But still, you can create digital repository objects. You can edit your own, you can search, and you can like do a lot of the things that normally a metadata professional would do in a repository. The agenda today is basically what I'm doing right now, introductions, right? And I'm going to give you also the greatest hits and tours and showcase. I will not sing, but I will show you things. Then we will actually go into the Europeana data model, an overview of the classes that's going to be presented by Allison. And then Allison is also going to present her work on like how EDM is implemented in Archipelago. This is something we did specifically for this workshop actually. And there will be time for like hands-on interaction in Archipelago from you, right? And of course, there's questions, open discussions, feedbacks, and probably some pauses every half an hour. So you can have like a glass of water, not wine, it's early for us, coffee or like whatever you want and come back. Housekeeping. If you can keep your microphone muted, that will be like great during the presentation. You can use the chat anytime. You can also like use the document that we shared for questions, but you can also use the chat, right? Open repositories has community guidelines, right? About like being fair to other people, right? No harassment and other things. Those apply here, of course, but we know we're between friends here and it's like a lovely community. So let's get started. What is Archipelago? Well, it's a digital objects repository architecture. And of course, there's like the Open Repositories Conference, right? Let's start with the code part. So Archipelago is basically 3 core Drupal 8 or 9 or 10 modules that try to cover the complete ADO. ADO is our Archipelago Digital Object Lifecycle. We have these 3 modules, Strawberry Field, which deals with all the data logic persistence and low-level CRUD and certain level of like intelligence into the system. Basically, it keeps like all your metadata, technical metadata, and everything stored safely, and can deal with also like exposing the metadata to the environment. Then we have web from Strawberry field that allows you to actually build your own workflows. It uses and expands an existing Drupal module named webform. So you can build your own web forms, your workflows, and add certain like interaction to your like one-by-one ingests. Then we have format Strawberry field, which takes out what the Strawberry field contains and shows it to the outside world, right? And most of today's workshop will be actually around the functionality that format Strawberry field provides. It's basically plugins and templates and everything that goes outside. Includes IIIF, 3D, mobile viewers, video viewers, and a lot of different things. And then we also added these two extra very powerful modules. One is named the AMI, which is like a tabular batch-driven importer. So you can just use spreadsheets or Google Sheets or Islandoras or any other system to feed your system with multiple objects. And the Strawberry Runners, which is like a post-processor that uses plugins that allows you to do very complicated post-processing or very simple ones. It can transform WARC files into WAXI, generate new JSON, do HOCR, and other things. Basically, if you can run something inside your server, the Strawberry Runners can take over that, and it uses something named PHP React, which is like a real-time PHP, to feed from a queue and do things when the system is idle or not very busy. And it's invisible to you, but the results of that are, of course, visible. But also, that's code, right? So code is no fun if you cannot like deploy, run, and test it, right? So Archipelago provides a way of deploying. It has like a well-selected choice of services. We have web, database, file storage, media access, and discovery. It's built on Docker Compose. It's an ensemble, right, that you get by default. The one that you get in the repository, which is like this 10 to 20 minute, is very complete. It even has like natural language processing, right? A container, and also a set of Drupal configurations that are loaded at the beginning. So you get a site that looks almost the same as you're seeing right now in Studio, right? You even get like demo objects by default. It has these guides from 0 to running that we have tested, and over-tested, and they work in the like 95% of the times. And if not, you have the community that will help you. And it has the public roadmap. The public roadmap actually started 2 years ago when we like made the first release. Archipelago is almost 3 years old already as an idea, 2 years as code, and I will say a year as like an implementation that people like and are using. And funny enough, it started actually in Open Repositories 2018 because we were very concerned about the amount of energy that all our colleagues were putting into migrating from one system to another. It was eternal, right? And we wanted to really like react to that in a different way. What happened here? Oh, sorry, back. Are you still seeing my screen? Okay, good. This is the Docker ensemble. It's like a very detailed technical diagram that you can see. Basically, we have the web, which contains Drupal 8 or Drupal 9, plus the Strawberry fields. You have a MySQL 8 version database by default, can be another thing. Postgres can be swapped. You have a Solar 8.8 version with a very special OCR plugin that was built by the Bavarian State Library. And you have Cantaloupe that provides all the media access. Archipelago does a lot of IIIF. We are like very convinced that IIIF, not only as a manifest and metadata sharing protocol is great, but also like as a server API side things. And everything here goes into EBS, right? Like you can like actually run this in Amazon or locally, right? But everything goes back into an S3 storage backend. So you see there's no Fedora here. There's not like a backend system. We're just using natively S3, either an Amazon or like Wasabi or any service that is like S3 compatible, or what we provide, which is Minio. And Minio is like an open source S3 implementation that can actually do something extremely cool. It can route your storage into other services. So you can hot swap your storage from Azure to Amazon to your local, or have redundance without ever having to change anything on your deployment or your configuration or your metadata. That was a very long explanation for a very simple doodle. Okay, but what Archipelago really tries to embrace, right, is a reality that is extremely complicated. We all in our fields, right, in libraries, archives, museums, cultural heritage organizations, institutional repositories, biodiversity collections, are dealing with very complicated hierarchical and very deeply nested sometimes metadata. This metadata, right, can have many shapes, can have many standards and schemas, can have like many serializations, and all these things many times are not totally clear during the design, nor the implementation. Uh, Basically, what we feel and we're convinced is that metadata needs to be and stay very intimate and close to the creator's identity, right? The way you classify, the way you actually like catalog your things, right, is closer actually to your reality, to the reality of the developers that build the system that you're like right now using, right? And I'm saying that because I'm come from a developer standpoint, right? And many times we developers made very hard decisions, which are needed, of course, right, to accommodate a certain range of use cases. And by doing that, we left a lot of people out, right? So statement here is that content creators, catalogers, repository admins know always more than developers. And of course, there are cases where developers and content creators are very close and can solve the problems together, right? So that's the reality we're living, right? So our approach to metadata, we really want to, and we enforce and we provide tools that the shapage of metadata can be totally created and defined by the creator's needs, right? Metadata is plastic, is evolving, and we want to actually like allow that to happen. And we're honoring that reality. So we removed from Archipelago all the hard-coded data models, right, that we actually could. So there's like a limit, right? And it's not longer inside the software, it's exposed to the end user, the admin end user, the metadata professional end user, right? And we provide tools so you can shape your repository and evolve with your repository based on your own expertise, right? The name Archipelago comes really from this idea, right? That each institution, each reality, each domain is like an island, and they have like many realities, many ways of living, right? But still there's like a level of cohesion, right? And the software is like this means of navigating the water in between, the current and the tides, right? But also like this connection that you can actually travel from one place to another without leaving behind what you learned. I don't have a slide for this, but this actually comes from, again, Open Repositories 2018. I spent a good time, right, looking at presentations of like large teams of like metadata professionals migrating the data from one system to another. And one of the things that happens with software is that software imposes a practice, right? So the software defines that you have to catalog things in mods or in Dublin Core. It defines a certain level of like types of objects you can have. It defines a lot of things, but what it doesn't define sometimes is the fact that when you're cataloging, you're putting a certain provenance, a certain intention as a cataloger that when you have to migrate disappears, right? So what we're really trying to do here is like, we are trying to build a system that is extremely stable, that has like a lot of functionality, but doesn't make assumptions of what you need, right? And you can actually start with something, but then evolve, right, as your metadata. Okay, so after this slide, I'm going to show you the greatest hits, so you get a bit inspired, but this is like an extremely important slide. We see the world in many different ways, right? And these are two paradigms. They're not probably the only ones, but they're like very common in repositories. Actually, the paradigm on the left is the most common one, and we name it the canned food metadata paradigm, right? We're cooks here, we like to bake, and we like to cook and recipes and experiment. So all the analogies come a bit from that. Basically, your system imposes a certain level, certain amount of schemas, right? And you have to fill your metadata and put your media and your classifications into that schema, right? In this case, this can, right, contains mods 3.6, right? And it expires in a certain moment because the schema will evolve. So a reality is that schemas are made by different people than actually developers. So sometimes schemas evolve faster. Imagine IIIF, right? It moved from version 2.1 to version 3. If your system is stuck in version 2.1, you have to wait for an update, right, in your software. Still, this canned food paradigm, right, which is still not, you can like eat it, it's always like that. It's good because it's very stable, right? It gives you like the facility of like always having mods, and that makes people feel very safe. On the right side, you have the Archipelago paradigm. I'm not saying we own the paradigm, we're just implementing it, right? And it's like a different one. You have ingredients, right? Your metadata, right? Your media, your assets, and you have recipes, right? So what you normally do as a cook, right, is you actually have a recipe and you have things inside your fridge. And it can be limited, right? Your fridge is your reality, right? And you start cooking, right? You start like building things with what you have, right? As time passes and you evolve and your needs change, your recipes actually get better. You reuse the same type of ingredients. In terms of metadata, ingredients are actually dimensions, right? The who, the where, the when, the what, right? And also the why, like the intention. And worst case scenario always, right? Like what we provide by default is that your food, right? Your output tastes like canned food. You're generating mods, right? But you can deconstruct. You can make the choice. I want to use a certain amount of ingredients for this recipe, right? And then you can evolve your recipes and make better recipes. So recipes are actually something we name here inside Archipelago metadata display entities, right? Which are templates. And the metadata, right, is actually your ingredients, and it's in JSON. So when you mix for things, your system becomes totally independent, like of the evolution of metadata and the schemas in time. You can implement IIIF version 4 without having to upgrade your system, right, or change anything, because it's a single recipe that's evolving, right? Or you can also have things inside your repository that don't fit in any schema that are useful for your workflows, right? Feelings, you can have them, right? Actually, I'm going to show you sentiment extraction somewhere. Okay, so I don't know how much time I spent already, Allison. 25 minutes. I'm going to go very fast into the greatest hits, and then I will give you a pause. Okay, so let's start with Studio Archipelago NYC. Can you see their website right now? Okay, so this is like a vanilla Archipelago. This is what you get when you deploy Archipelago by default, right? With a few extras that we added last night. This is like a Drupal 8 repository running all the different things we have. You see, you have like a very simple slide on the front and welcome message. And let's start watching the discovery here. So this is like a Solr-driven display, right? Everything that you're seeing here is like driven by one of these recipes, right? The way you display this here, the way you generate this, the way you actually see a single object, right, is driven by a recipe. And your metadata is right now, because I'm logged in, hidden, right? Once I log in, you will see the raw metadata. And Archipelago can like deal with a lot of different assets, right? For example, this here is a web archive, right? And it's like loading in real time. It's using a format in Waxy, right? That can stream from a big zip, different chunks, so you can like see that. You have linked data here, in this case, Getty and Wikidata, and you have maps. And you have also a display here, right? And information. All the data in this side is actually coming from the same source, right? A single row JSON that is transformed. Archipelago can deal with web archives, can deal with books, right? With OCR, right? Let's search here for, which one is this? Rounds. Okay, you see, we have there OCR. You have more linked data here. You see, it's like different than the other one, and more information. That's driven by IIIF, and the IIIF manifest is driven by a template. You have collections, right? You have multiple viewers, the Mirador viewer in this case. Also like a Navarro template that drives the IIIF version 3. Let me filter here a bit. Let me show you 3D model. It can deal with 3D models, low 3D model. Okay, 3D model. Let me go back. It can deal with creative work series, which is like sometimes seen as compound objects in all places, right? There's like a IIIF manifest that is like generating from 2 other related objects. The semantics in Archipelago are very open, so you can connect objects in any way you want, right? These ones are like is part of another one. And you see down here, you can see that individual constituents, but you can also like travel here directly. And let me go back. Do we have some collections here? And collections. Okay, let's look at the Flora collection. The Flora collection here is using the Mirador viewer to have a collection manifest. So actually I can see each object individually, or I can go to each object down here, right? And has its own metadata and everything, the maps here, etc. By the way, this is actually linked data. So if I press here, you will see I'm going to Getty, I'm going here to Wikidata, and I'm going to Library of Congress, etc., etc. Archipelago is also a data modeling tool. So it provides like Library of Congress to VF, to Wikidata, to Getty, and now Europeana reconciliation endpoints, right? You can use Archipelago as a standalone system to like check your validity of like labels against sources, right? Let me go back here. And what else can I show you? 3D models, audio objects, conversations. Let me see the conversation. There's like oral history. You see I have audio on top. I have here down a PDF, and the PDF has also attached images. And these are different assets, right? So Archipelago doesn't impose the limit of things you can add to a single digital object. In this case, the single digital object, not a component, contains a PDF, this beautiful woman, right? And also an audio, right? And you can mix things together. And the way you display an object in Archipelago is driven by the JSON type, which I'm going to show you in a little few. What else is interesting here? Facets are driven by the main JSON, but let me remove this one here and show you a few things. Let me see here. Okay. Web Archives discovery. So because Web Archives contain our collections of websites, right? And each URL was like harvested with its own HTML, you can also like find inside the Web Archive all the contents. So in this case, you see like if I search for API, right? I will get only the things that exist inside that, and those lead internally to exactly the thing that we need, right? The entity API, for example. But also on the right side, you see we have natural language process extracted agents and natural language extracted locations. This is something that Archipelago does via the Strawberry Runners module. It's part of like the indexing of this thing. And Archipelago provides its own container, which is like the natural language 64 container, which has services for a lot of things. Language detection, entity extraction, it can do polyglot, it can do like spacey, it can generate abstracts and other things. We mark this as natural language extracted agents because these things are not human curated, right? And they do fail. They're like more like a context, right? In this case, agents, the context and ID, they're agents, but not really agents, right? They just extracted from there. But it gives you a certain like amount of like information, like the locations kind of match pretty well. And if I press here, entity API Europeana, we harvest the API website here. You see it leads internally to the page API, right? If I go back and I go to this one, it leads to this page, right? Or APIs. So you can like really find inside and show that. And same goes for OCR. So OCR is processed from PDFs or images, right? And you see it's not perfect because OCR, depending on the source, can fail. But it has also like agents, right? Places and sentiment, right? Sentiment is, of course, something extremely subjective, right? But it gives you like an overview. So like if I find here's -1, it's negative, 1 is like very positive. If I go to negative things, right? And then I go here, you see, it's also like detecting now that I have like things in German here. It will filter out, and then I can search things that have like Leipzig, right? And now have the pages that mention Leipzig and are like of the negative sentiment, right? And then I can find Donnerstag, which is like probably a very negative day because it's almost Friday, but not Friday. And then you have this, right? And then I can just like check on one of this, right? And I go to that page specifically, right? Same with the OCR. This OCR here is good enough, actually, given the source, right? But it's not perfect. So those are the greatest hits as a logged out user, right? Probably more things will be exposed to you now that Allison is going to show you the other things, but I'm going to just quickly go back to my slides, if you're okay. and finish showing a few things here and presenting again. Okay, so this is an object the way I showed you inside the repository, right? You have like link data on the right side, VF, our things, a map, object description, and a viewer, right? So given this object, this is like a diagram that tries to explain how things happen inside Archipelago. So in the middle, this creator here is your digital object, right? It contains two types of like properties. The ADO, the Archipelago Digital Object Properties, right? Which is like the user that owns it, a UID, a stable UID, and an internal ID, dates and our things, the status, and it contains also this thing named Strawberry Field. Strawberry Field inside Drupal is a Drupal field, like what you normally use in CMS, that covers in its entirety the whole workflow cycle. Instead of having one field for subject, one field for our things, one field for title, the Strawberry field is like a JSON blob, right? How you feed this JSON blob? Via the webform integration, right? You can have like one or multiple webforms. The webforms have keys for each element, and they feed this JSON. Archipelago has autosave and restore sessions and all things for the webforms, so kind of cool. But basically, it's like a transformation. You have like a user interface, you follow different steps, right? You have conditionals, depending on what type of object you select, you see certain fields, and then it feeds the JSON. Or you use the AMI, the Archipelago Multi-Importer, which can use CSV, Solar, Google spreadsheets, Islandoras, and just like puts the data into the same thing, right? But the AMI uses the templating system in between, right? So it transforms the CSV via a template into JSON. You're asking, what is a template? Why is he speaking about templates? Allison will show you that. So how do we reach this abstract entity, this digital object, to these different states into what you were seeing, the giving ADO? Well, what happened is like each of these different pieces here is a formatter. A formatter is kind of like a plugin, a viewer, right? It's like, show me a Mirador viewer, show me an OpenSea Dragon viewer. By the way, I forgot to show you annotations. We also have annotations. That's on our pages. I forgot. There are many formatters, right? So these formatters are fed through templates, right? And these templates can transform the JSON into a IIIF manifest, into a GeoJSON document, into many other things, right? So the JSON is fed into the template does some processing, right? And then passes to the formatter, and the formatter generates this representation. The same happens with the search, right? So each item in the search is passed to a twig template, to a formatter, and to the search. Because the twig templates are cached and are transformed into code, right? They're very optimal. They were actually made to generate HTML, but we use them for other things. So what do we do also? The same templating system can be used to expose your JSON, very intimate, close to you metadata, into outside-facing metadata schemas that conform with the reality that you're like living in, right? So via twig template, there's like one that transforms everything into a mods XML, right? And you can access inside the DO / the UID of the object / metadata / mods / default.xml, your XML. And you can do the same for the IIIF version 2, for the IIIF collections, for the Dublin Core, and for the EDM. And these ones can also feed back certain formatters. The combinations are immense, right? You can even like have one repository generate this for another repository, right? You can mix IIIF manifests from your own server with external ones, and you can do a lot. And it might sound boring, and it might sound a lot, but once you start using what we provide a lot of this already done, right? You will see that making tiny changes, like defining what is shown to the user, if the title is uppercase, if you want to show all the creators in certain place, or if you want to hide certain metadata, becomes something totally doable without a software developer or without any external entity. Finally, if you know JSON, or if you have seen JSON, you know that JSON can be hierarchical and deep, right? We use deep hierarchical JSON, right? Or JSON contains a lot of things. So we have this tiny processors, kind of like almost like a synthesizer, right? that can take the deep data from the JSON and flatten the data out. So Solar, the search index, can actually generate a document. That means we can take all the labels from Subjects Library of Congress and all the labels from Wikidata and make a JMS path query, join them together, and create a field inside Solar named Subjects. That means you can search all unified. And it's quite powerful because you can have like hundreds of these ones, but they're only used on index time, so they don't add an overhead to your system, right? And you can change them in real time without affecting any of the different pieces, right? Okay, this is the star diagram. And this is like the last one, Allison, I'm going to move very fast. I know I'm kind of late. One leg of the same diagram, same abstraction here, right? Your digital object. Each of the pieces is generated via a formatter, right? The Mirador IIIF formatter, the metadata formatter generates this block, the metadata formatter generates a GeoJSON, the metadata formatter generates this one here, right? All these formatters are joined under something named a display mode. The display mode is like a configuration, a group, right? And this one is named digital object with Mirador viewer, right? These view modes are triggered by the type of the object. So if your object is, in this case, a visual artwork coming from schema.org, Archipelago has the functionality that is set up by default that you can modify that says, if it's this, use this display mode, right? But you can also force a display mode. If you want to show this object with the OpenSea viewer, you do that. So what happens? How is this metadata formatter here like fed, right? Here are templates. The metadata templates, the strict templates that you have not seen, so you're wondering what they are, feed each one, right, the metadata formatters, the Mirador AAA formatters, right? And they generate internally either HTML, GeoJSON, object descriptions, GeoJSON-LD, etc. How do they know how to do that? They need data to do that. By the way, metadata templates are also entities inside your repository. So they're like citizens. They live inside a repository, they can preserve, they can save, they can be shared, right? They exist there. The digital object itself, right? So the digital object is fed into the template as a context, right? And you get all the data of the digital object plus the strawberry field that you can access as data.label, etc., right, into that. And that transformation ends into this. And all the workshop is going to happen on this side, right, of things. Oh, I forgot to turn the captions, so sorry. Okay, and now you're finally seeing a template, right? So on the left side, no more doodles, there's a JSON, right? This is the raw JSON, the single piece of blob metadata that is stored inside your system, right? And you see in this case, it's a book, right? It has like Canto General, which is like a book from Paulo Neruda. And you have like the owner and all the information. And you see it's hierarchical, right? Subject Wikidata contains a URI and a label. So on the right side, this is like the EDM quick template, right? You see a thing that already looks like an XML, right? Everything in black is an XML. But everything that it has like a curly bracket and a percentage sign is a command. And everything that has two curly brackets is an output. So you see, like in this case, where like data.language contains all the languages inside your metadata, and then it's like iterating over that and putting it out as DC language, the language, right? And that goes for everything. This way you can build very interesting outputs. Any schema can be supported, right? And you're using your ingredients with a new recipe, right? Tick, learning curve, yes. New, probably, or not. Has amazing documentation, very deep documentation, can do the same things as you will normally do when you're writing HTML, but also like can do things that are like more closer to like something you will see in OpenRefine. Allison wrote also this very good starting guide with metadata tweaks, explanations, how data is being transformed to one side to another, how you take data from your JSON and show it out. And then we have also a presentation we did a few weeks ago and another doodle, right? Metadata, app-casted via that, and that's all. Finally, this is a thing that explains how an archipelago object is born. digital object, title, strawberry field, nothing else. It's a digital object, a single generic digital object. You have a web form that feeds the strawberry field, generates JSON, uploads the files into temporary, and this new digital object is about to be born, has a tiny tail there, has subscribers that do a lot of things. It's like events, I'm being born, I'm being transformed. And then we enrich, we generate a vocabulary automatically, we persist the files, we deposit all your things into storage. Every digital object has a file representation. So your full JSON becomes a file. Your files become files, of course, right? So you can also like migrate out very easily. And finally, the digital object is born, has its own URI, has the formatters, has the keys, right? And can be seen, right? And Cantaloupe connects directly to S3 on the backend and shows all the beautiful images and PDFs you have. Whoa, we made it, and it took me forever. You okay?
I am good. I think we are all good. We did receive a couple questions in the chat.
Excellent.
So this might be a good time to address those. First up from Laurel, she asked about the Wikidata. If an entity is linked to Wikidata, does one automatically get all the references, authorities, IDs contained in the Wikidata for the entity?
No, we're not doing that right now. And the reason for that is because we felt that initially the safest way of like keeping your objects disconnected from the changing reality of like external authorities was just to bring the label that you as a professional saw, right, plus the URL, but not bring the metadata itself, right? It's like a longer philosophical discussion, right? But the way we see linked data is that it's basically like a representation in time of certain things, right? And those things can change in time, right? It doesn't mean that we will not be able to do that in the future. It's like the API is there, right? But we decided not to bring it in.
Hope that answers your question, Laurel. Next up, two questions from Tomas, two separate ones. He asked about the viewer navigation for audio and video files. Is there timestamp navigation available?
So we use the HTML5 viewer for audio and video, right? It has capabilities of like reading transcripts with timelines, right? Archipelago can also generate IIIF capable audio and video manifests, right? But we haven't implemented yet a viewer that can actually read the last one. The only one we are aware, and please correct us, that can do that right now is the universal viewer, right? And because we have too many viewers right now, we decided not to go for this release with that, but release candidate 3 will have the universal viewer present. When that's happening, everything that is like related to times will be able to be read directly from a manifest. But for now, it's just the keys that are provided inside the annotations that you have in like a transcript, right, for audio and video. And the next question is?
He would like to know, Tomas again, can you have multiple digital objects as part of one item?
Yes, totally. So the one I was showing with the beautiful toucans, right, is actually one digital object with two children, right? The way you connect them, it's like via the web form, you say it's part of, right? We're using Creative Work Series as like a synonym for compounds, right? But you can have like other type of connections. If time permits, we can also like show Allison the panorama viewer, because we have like a panorama tour builder that uses multiple panoramas, each one for a scene, right? And that connects also objects as like highlight points, right? Hotspots, which is kind of like the same idea too. But yes, totally. Semantic relationships are like out of the box.
Okay, great. And we have one more question for now. Also, he or she, not sure, sorry, I see, also asked, when I have a collection of objects and their metadata, would there be a tool for helping me import them?
Totally.
Batch importing.
Yeah, so batch importing. Spreadsheets work also via these templates. That means you have a spreadsheet with different columns. The spreadsheet has like an ingest builder, right? Where you like make decisions. It's like which column contains my types, which columns contain my labels, right? And then all the data from the spreadsheet is pushed into a template that transforms that into JSON, into raw JSON. So yes, you can, through that, either transform your data raw, the way it's coming from your system, that's what we're kind of promising, and then evolve your metadata into the shape of what you need, right? Or transform your data up from via the template, right? And ingest that. It's also like an iterative process. You can like copy, generate that, process. You don't like what you get, delete, ingest again, and it's very fast. I don't want to show off here, but it takes like 2 to 3 seconds to ingest an object with remote TIFF files and generate the JSON. And that means a large migration can happen in a week, right?
And I also dropped a link to the documentation for the Archipelago multi-importer into the chat just now.
Okay, and sorry for taking so much time. I get excited and emotional and that, but thank you for your questions. Let's make a tiny break so you can breathe, and we're back in 3 to 5 minutes, Allison.
Yep.
And thank you for moderating.
Thank you, everybody. So we'll come back in about 3.5 minutes, so at 11:20. So I'm going to pause the recording and I'm going to mute myself. So we'll see you back in just a couple minutes, everybody. Okay. So this next portion of the presentation is going to focus on the Europeana and the Europeana data model and how it is implemented in Archipelago. So before getting into that, if everybody could just kind of do a little quick reaction, or maybe something in the chat, like if they are familiar with the Europeana data model, if you're using it at your institution, you know, just a quick wave before we get started. Anybody? Okay. Not familiar. Okay. All right. Not a problem. Just wondering if there are any super Europeana data model pros here. Okay, so, all right. Well, hopefully you get a nice introduction here. We're not going to go too deep. There's some wonderful documentation available on through Europeana itself, and this will be a brief overview. So to get started, Europeana probably needs no introduction, but I will just share some information about it. It is a very large aggregate digital repository. There's many organizations that participate, and there are thousands of European archives, libraries, and museums that share cultural heritage works of all different types, that provides access to millions of books, music, artwork, and more. And there's sophisticated tools for searching, and there is a robust data model that all of the organizations share their sources, their resources using. You can find out more about the technical infrastructure for Europeana and lots of deeper guides on the Europeana Pro website. So I'm going to go to the next slide. And a lot of this information came directly from that Europeana Pro site, and they have different presentations. The presentation and some of the documents are a little older, but they're still, you know, the vast majority are up to date and current. And if there are any differences between the guidelines and what is currently available, I've kind of tried to highlight that wherever I can on the upcoming slides. So again, these are just like kind of like the greatest hits. I would definitely recommend all of these resources. They really help you develop a stronger understanding of the Europeana data model. So getting into it, the Europeana data model is basically an agreed upon standard that all of the participating organizations got together, and they really worked over many years. It's evolved, like, you know, over the lifespan of Europeana, and it's at a very robust state today. There are 3 core classes in the Europeana data model, and they are basically everything shared with Europeana is an aggregation with a provided CHO, which is cultural heritage object, and a web resource. Each submission of an item to Europeana should give rise to the creation of these three types of resources or sections in your metadata. The provided CHO is the source cultural heritage object. The web resource, and it can be one or more, is the digital object. That's for the digital object being submitted. And then there's another class, the ORE aggregation, which applies to the overall package, ties everything together. Each of these classes will have its own associated metadata. So there are those three core metadata sections per item, core sections, parts of the record. And this is kind of, this is from the EDM presentation itself, and it kind of captures it in an image. So if you think of it this way, the original painting of the Mona Lisa is what you would, would consider the EDM provided CHO. This is like your real object, your original object. And then the EDM web resource class is for the digital image of the Mona Lisa, or if it was, a multimedia object or object that had multiple files, you would have many web resources. And then the ORE aggregation is the class that links the properties between all of the associated classes. And there are also additional properties that apply to the whole group for this package that you've submitted, such as the data provider for who's submitting it to Europeana. For the provided CHO class, like kind of your main metadata record class, if you think of it that way, there are mandatory properties, and anything highlighted in orange here is included in the Archipelago Europeana data model template that you can see in the notes and that we're going to walk through a little later. So these are, DC is Dublin Core. So those are the basic, simple Dublin Core. You can see, sorry, I have a Mac mouse and it has a side swipe. This list is very extensive. In the EDM mapping guidelines, there's a full table that lists out all of the different properties that you can have, even more than what you would be able to see here on the screen. But it's essentially what we think of as our classic metadata record. The properties in blue in this box are recommended properties that we've decided to include in our template, and there are more extensive ones if you are interested. For the EDM web resource class, again, this can be for one or more web resources that are provided for that cultural heritage object. There are no mandatory properties for this, but most commonly you will see, the web resource, what it is actually about, like the link to the actual representation of the object that you're providing, and then additional things. You could have individual rights for each web resource. Like, let's say you had an audio file that could only be accessed, was not available, had a different license than maybe the image for something. So you could really break down how that's defined. You could also include extended information from EB Core, which we have done in the Archipelago template for your MIME type, your width heights, different things to describe your digital resources further. For the aggregation class, this is again what represents the set of related resources about the real object contributed by one provider, and it carries the metadata that is about the whole set, so everything. There are mandatory properties for this class, and we've included all of those. Is shown at and is shown by and is shown at are both mandatory, but it's either or. We've only gone so far as to include is shown at in our template. And of the optional properties, we are including EDM has view. So there's, again, a fuller list of properties available in the mapping guidelines for this, if you're interested. Also, a quick note about the difference between the EDM data provider and the EDM provider. The EDM data provider property is the name or identifier of the data provider of the object. So that would be the organization providing data to an aggregator. And if in the case of Europeana, sometimes there are smaller institutions that provide their data to get it to Europeana, they provide it to a larger provider, and that would go into that aggregates it for them on their behalf, perhaps even prepares their information as needed for Europeana. In our template, we set it to the Archipelago Commons digital repository for EDM provider, but that is just for kind of demonstration purposes. Obviously, we are not saying that Archipelago is a EDM provider. I just wanted to point that out in case you notice it, but just to show how you might fill it out. It's entirely possible that you could have both filled out in your own instance as the same if you were in fact a provider and the data provider. Besides those 3 core classes, you also have optional contextual classes. On this slide, which is a little older, they're saying contextual entities, but they are broken out into separate contextual classes. In the Archipelago EDM template, we've included a few of these. EDM agent, this comprises people either individually or in groups who have contributed to who have the potential to perform intentional actions about the object that they're responsible for. So in Archipelago, we are sourcing from Wikidata agents and also the Europeana entities metadata sources. We have also included SCOS concept, and this is your subject terms from a thesaurus or controlled vocabulary. In our template, we are sourcing from Wikidata, Europeana entities, and also Library of Congress. Those are optional. There's other ones you can link to as well if you're interested. And the last contextual class we have chosen to include is EDM place, and that is the spatial location identified by the provider and named according to some vocabulary or local convention. In Archipelago, we are sourcing this from OpenStreetMap's geolocation metadata. And that wraps up kind of the slides for this section. And now we're going to go over to the studio.archipelago.nyc site. And using your provided account, you'll be able to log in as I am now with the Metadata Pro user role. And we can walk you through just like looking at a few of the examples here. So without further ado, I'm going to switch my sharing to a different screen. So now I am logged in at the studio.archipelago.nyc site. And again, if you did not receive the email with the link to your user account, please just reach out directly in the chat and Diego will hook you up right now with that. First thing, when you log in, you'll see this. And I am going to go over to the metadata templates so you can see all the different templates that Diego was talking about earlier in his portion of the presentation. This list contains everything on the site. The object description is kind of what you see when you're logged out here, like you're just looking at it as a regular user. It would be like this portion right here in particular. The linked data template is right here. The geolocation is here, just going back over that. For the Europeana data model template, I'm just going to open this up and go through the different sections. So in the notes document, we also provided a way for you to showed the example of how you can bring up each of these different templates by adding metadata or /metadata, the exposed metadata endpoint description. So in this case, it would be EDM and then the default whatever is needed. So you can see how this looks as a full document extended. For here, just a couple things to note. We've pulled out a couple notes. So when you're looking at it, it's a little bit easier for you to read, but these wouldn't necessarily always be part of your templates. It's more for this workshop just to make for human, easier human readability. A couple of things we are providing by default that might not necessarily apply to yourself if you were using this to prepare your metadata to submit to Europeana. This is all specific to this site, and if you were doing it on your own, you would of course want your own data and information there. There are also some parts of the Europeana data model submission package that we cannot apply ourselves because they are provided to anyone wanting to submit things by Europeana, like your identifier for your data providers and things like that. So there's a couple of things missing. So if you're like, oh, where is this? We don't have that set up here. You would have to extend that yourself. It's just a couple small pieces that they provide to you. So I'm just gonna scroll down here. It looks like one thing to note, you don't have the option to edit here, so you can't see the preview. But if you did want to use this yourself to go through trying to source different pieces in the and add a few more properties, optional properties to this template to kind of see how it's done. You would go back out to the list, find whatever one you wanted to copy and extend, probably in this case, the Europeana data model, copy the entire thing. So I'm just doing Control-C, then go back out and add a metadata display. I'm going to paste that in there, and then I'm just going to call it EDM testing template. And then you can save this, but you don't have to. And then if you use the preview function, then you will be able to bring up an object, see its JSON data at the top, go through that, and then like work with the template side by side and test out adding different pieces, removing things to get yourself started. And that's what we'd like to do in kind of the next 10 minutes. Have everybody kind of log in, look around. You can go through adding an object individually and then trying to kind of like work with it and look at it using the preview option here to adjust your metadata templates or just kind of get a better understanding of how it looks. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it back over to Diego for the next few minutes.
No, me no.
No? Okay.
Poor people. Okay, so what I'm going to do is kind of walk you through first creating a digital object. I think that's kind of like the most user-facing experience first, because strict templating and like modifying templates can be scary if you haven't read the documentation before, right? And then I'm going to like do exactly what Allison did, which is basically like load one of the trick templates, right, and show you how the data has been transformed, right? And we're also going to show you a few of the smaller, more simple trick templates, because Europeana is an aggregation schema, right? That means it's like adding data from all over the place. And we're also going to look quickly at what actually the raw data is that you have like available, your ingredients, right? So thank you, Allison, by the way, for your presentation. Okay, so where do I have Chrome? Good. Hopefully you can see this, right? I'm going to go through the whole process. I'm not logged in, so I'm going to log in. I'm going not to use my admin user because that's kind of like a lot. I'm going to use the demo user. And with the demo user, oh, demo, tiny second. There you go. Okay, I forget my passwords, too many. I'm logged in as a demo user. This is the same role that you have, right? So the first thing I'm going to do here is like, I'm going to press on tools and I'm going to press add content, right? So add content will give me the choice of like a digital object collection, but also things that are like basically about the site, right? Like articles, basic pages, and web forms for context and all stuff. What we want to create here is like an item level object, right? So a digital object, right? So I'm going to press here. And what I'm presented here is a web form, right? This web form can be modified, right? If you have like the time to deploy your own local instance, then you have like an admin account, right? You can modify any of these things. So let's start filling up certain things here, like the title. Allison, what if I just borrow something from Europeana, right? Europeana collections. Okay, let's discover something. Football teams. I'm not. Oh, this is like City of Bike cycling. Okay, this is beautiful. And let me see if I can see something here. Do you know, Allison, if I can like you see objects here, or just directly that?
If you go back up to the search, yes, and then you can search for
Here, right?
yes, and then I would recommend going with something that is if in the top where it says, "Can I use this?"
Okay, can I use this? Yes. Good. Thank you. Okay, that's a beautiful one. A cycling family. Okay, let's look at this one. Okay, so you see I have here a few images, and in this case, it's actually 3 images, right? So I'm actually going to download these images to my computer, right? And it's going to just download them, and I'm going to get probably a single image. And do you know if the download actually downloads everything? No, right?
I don't think so.
Oh yeah, like if I advance, it's downloading. Okay, I got 2. So going back to the actual create a digital object. So a cycling family, that's the title. Digital object here, cycling family. Media type, I'm going to use photographs here. Short description, required. Okay, read more, the whole description. Perfect. Date of origin. 76, right? I guess so, but we're going to see all the metadata here. And you see we're kind of looking here at different levels of metadata. In this case, you see timestamps created and updated are like time of digital, right? But we want here in Archipelago to actually use, right, the date of origin, right? So I'm going to actually go for 196, and I'm going to just like use the 01, 01. Okay, good. Creator link data. So creator link data is like connected to the APIs that we provide. So if I go here to personal or corporate, and I'm going to actually start here by adding Europeana because we're borrowing something from Europeana, right? I'm going to give it a role, right? So Europeana, digital library, good. You have like the Library of Congress URL, and the road here is like provider, good, right? Vocabulary. And we can add something extra. Do we have someone here? No entities, contributors, James Morley. And James Morley is not like controlled, right? So we cannot use that. So I'm going to use that as like a non-unmap free, right? There, creator, perfect. And we don't need anything else here. Publisher, Europeana, language, English. Okay, move to next step. Collection membership. Here's like where you select part of what this is going to be, right? If Archipelago has like collection for that, you can just like type the collection and you will get a collection here. In this case, we are going to not make this object part of any collection because it's not needed, right? Archipelago doesn't impose a collection, right? And creative work series, when you have like multiple objects with different metadata, you want to connect them, right? You will select something here, right? Institutional owner, in this case, we are, Allison, help me with your metadata expertise. Are we the institutional owner, or is the institutional owner Europeana?
The institutional is the person who submitted the package to Europeana.
Okay, James Morley, perfect. Identifier, we're going to make this, do they have like actually an identifier here?
Sometimes they do.
Sometimes they do, right? Collection name, that's sports, and identifier, that's the identifier, right? It's kind of like a long one. I don't know if it even fits. It fits, okay. Date of digital, that was like 2020, right? And let me check the date again. Okay, that's like the 26th of November. November 26, right? Did I say that? Okay, perfect. And right statements, this is like actually educational use permit, but we're also going to copy the full right statements I have here, which is like the Creative Commons license, right? Okay, there you go. And now we have both things. Next step, Library of Congress. So cycling. Does exist? Okay. Accidents? No. Cycling. Okay, good. What else do we have? Diseases? I don't know what that's connected there. Okay, let's put family. Okay, family, good. And there was like also charity fundraising. Does it exist? Or fundraising? No, it doesn't exist as subject labels. Okay, good. Personal names, we don't have here, but we're going to go for corporates, in this case, Europeana. Okay, that and geographic names, we had here a few things that were like in Clevering, Essex, right? Do we have Clevering? Perfect. And we had also here for Capas. Let's see, does it even exist in Library of Congress? Yes, it exists. Good. And gender form, help me here, Allison. Sorry, people, I'm not like a metadata person.
Photographs.
Photographs. Thank you. Wikidata. Charity. Okay, fundraising. That's an article. That's not charity. Let's go for that. Okay, that's the definition. And we're also going to add cycling. Okay, and Wikidata agents, nothing. Get the architectures. We're going to add photographs, photo advertising, photographs, photo archives. Okay, that sounds good. DF, nothing in this case, and Europeana. Okay, let's use the Europeana models here. Sports, that's actually a subject they have. You see, like not everything here is actually linked because the Europeana source of metadata, their control vocabularies are smaller than the other ones. So going for sport and sport, there you go. Okay, and agents, we won't find here anything because they're not like that, but we do have the UK. Do we have the UK? Okay, Britain. Okay, I guess it's that the right one. And Essex, England. Okay, and what else did we have here? For campus. Okay. For camp, no. So Switzerland. And finally, we do want to add forecast here and the place itself, right? Okay, that's not the right one. Did I write forecast correctly, Allison?
Yes.
Let me see if I can find that one. Forecast Switzerland. Okay. I guess that's the one. That's tourism because that's like a building and that's aerial. Okay, that makes sense. Good. And now we have latitude, and all the other things. And local uncontrolled vocabularies, we could add all the other things that exist here, right? Youth, family, and other things, but we don't need it because we have plenty of linked data. And finally, attach the images. So I'm going to go to my download folder, and I guess that was my download there. Okay, we're going to add this two different ones. Open. Okay, and Archipelago also extract here some EXIF data, so you can see that, right? And we're adding just two, right? So it's photographs, we have that, right? And now I'm going to save the metadata, right? And now I have like the metadata saved, and I have to decide if I want to like publish this object as draft or as public, right? So I'm going to go public so you can also see the object, right? And probably you're like following up and creating fancy digital objects. If not, it's okay. Publish, save. I want to, and all should go fine. And it's going to do some stuff. And you see we got new files persistent in storage, new terms were added to the vocabulary. Archipelago generates a dynamic vocabulary. Everything is like in the file system, they're tracked and everything. And you can like now go one page and over, right? Or you can also annotate, because that's so cool, right? And if I annotate this, sorry, Allison, I'm spending too much time annotating, but I like annotating. Okay. Human. Okay, now we have a human there. Good. And then you can like save the annotation. I'm not going to save the annotation. Okay, so everything was created here, right? So how is this like twig templating thing working actually? You have all the metadata on the right, we have all the information that's been generated, but also because you're logged in, if you go down, you will see that the row JSON, the strawberry field content is here, right? And this is a lot, right? Because our strawberry fields JSON contain descriptive metadata, right? The description, right? The subject library of Congress, but it also contains technical metadata, right? File level metadata, and also flags that helps us like do things. Why do we bring everything together? Because when you're building something like an EDM data model, or you're building a IIIF manifest, you actually want to have access to information about the files, about like metadata and everything together. This is the blob that is saved right now inside your database and also inside your Solr and everywhere. First step, let's look at actually how this has been transformed now via a tape template that Allison built into Europeana. So if I type on top here, metadata slash EDMs, right? Slash default.xml. This is like a dynamic road. So whatever you expose, right, as metadata will be available. You can have other systems or like other versions of stuff. And this is the XML, right? It's rendered in real time, right? It's like transformed and rendered in real time and cached. So it's quite fast. If you reload, again, right? Very fast. Okay. And you get all the different messages here because they're repeating themselves. Okay, view, we have that. Let's actually look how this is being transformed and how we can play with this. So I'm going to mimic exactly what you will normally do. Disclaimer. No repository normally will have like 100 people or 25 people or 12 people modifying the templates at the same time, because it's more like a metadata modeling decision. So what we're doing here is like not the exact workflow. It's more like teaching you how that will work if you're in charge of this repository, right? Tools. I'm going to go to the metadata templates, and I'm going to here, right? Select the Europeana data model one, which is like the one that Allison generated. I'm going to copy this one here because I'm not an admin. This was created by the admin, right? Copy. I'm going to add a metadata display. I'm going to no select a language here. It's not needed. I'm going to name this like EDM by Diego. I'm Diego. The username is me, right? And I'm going to just pass this. By passing that, I'm also here going to select what type of output I expect, right? So you can basically tell the system this thing should actually generate XML or text or CSV or RDF turtle or JSON, etc. Right? Okay, I have this. So by default, this template, right? If I just go to preview right here and I have nothing, it's just like that, right? It's just like a template. But by selecting an object, a source to display this, we're going to select the same one, cycling family, right? A cycling family. Okay. I press show preview, right? And on the right, it's actually going to render this template to the data that's containing that to the outside. How do you actually build these templates? So on the top here, you see you have also this tiny drop down. And if you do that, you can see the raw data that's been passed by the system into the template. So actually, let's scroll a bit down here, and I'm going to make my screen a bit wider, and I'm going to move this. Let me close this so it moves there. I'm going to search here for label. You see there, data.label inside the title. Okay, so if I show the preview again, you will notice here that DC title contains a cycling family, and inside my row JSON, label is a cycling family. So inside the system, data.label with a curly bracket means output everything that's inside data, and this is data, right? And you have, that's like a single string, right? You have like other things, like multiple elements when you have a square bracket, curly brackets with more, which is like properties, and you have information, etc. So small things that you can do to just like see how this works. Let's make this data label here uppercase. Upper, pipe. Pipe means basically append a command like a transformation after that. It's upper, right, Allison? I'm a Google person. I normally just search for stuff in Google. I don't keep anything in my brain. Okay, show preview. Okay, a cycling family now in upper, right? Good, right? Okay, so this here is just showing the output without any validation. So if I now press here, show preview using the native output format, the decision of having made XML will be applied here, and this will be validated, right? So show preview, and now it's validated and no errors, right? So let's make an error. And I'm going to remove this one, DC title here, and show preview. Whoa, this is not an XML, right? Good. So going back, Control Z, and DC title, show preview. So what happens with this, right? Basically, you have like a frame around, which is everything in black. You have data passed by the system, and you have metadata passed by each object, right? You have iterations, in this case, like data descriptions, right? If the description is longer than 0, right, and you have multiple descriptions, then show them all. If you have a single description, show a single one. Same happens for language, right? Same happens for like Library of Congress. So in this case, if data.subject of Library of Congress, let's go back here. Let me copy this, subject Library of Congress here. There, subject Library of Congress. You see, I have like 1, 2 entries, right? So for each subject Library of Congress, right, for each of these elements, output only the label, right? And the next label, family, right? Okay, is this actually happening? Let me go down here, there, cycling family, right? And this is actually the output. The same structure happens for everything. And there are a few ones that are more complicated, like when you're dealing with a web resource. And this is the reason also why Archipelago is good for these things, because you have inside your metadata the files itself, right? So let me go for this one. Allison, am I boring people to death here? Help me.
No, you are definitely not. Tomas just asked if this, because we're coming to the end of the session though, maybe we should pause for questions.
Yeah.
At the end. Tomas just asked if this templating engine was something that was developed for Archipelago or if it's part in an existing package or library.
It's part of like an existing library. So the only thing we did was actually expose this to the end user as something that you control from the front end and no longer depend on like something that is like saved inside a hard drive, inside like a very hidden software developer file, right? And we also like pushed certain amount of data and made some caching and over like rendering improvements. But Twig template is part of a Symfony package, right? The Symfony package is like a framework for PHP. Drupal is built on that, and it was made to render very fast HTML pages. Because of its like flexibility, and because we tested this like Twig template a few years before when we were like working on Alandora as a way of ingesting, we actually went for this, and it has like made us very happy actually. But it's like well maintained. It has like extension. You can extend it. You can add more capabilities, and we have already vendors that are using Archipelago that have extended the Twig templating to do very, very complicated and interesting things. Was that the question, Allison?
Yes, it was.
Okay. So just to show you a bit deeper in this, right? This is like my admin account, right? As an admin, I can actually like see all the other metadata displays and modify that. You see, like this is a different interface. And show you like maybe one that it's like easier to read, right? In this case, mods 3.7, right? So mods is like another very North American standard that some people around the world are using, but very specific here. I will say it's kind of like a Dublin core with hierarchies, right? It tries to cover that same thing. You see, it has the same idea, right? So for the same object that we're just like looking at, right? I'm going here to preview. I'm going to type cycling, right? And I'm going to show a preview, right? I get a mods record, right? And it looks exactly like the way it should be mods, right? So now going back, if I go to Dublin Core, right? Simple Dublin Core XML, which is even more easier to read, right? The same, edit, right? Preview, right? Cycling, show preview, right? And this one has like actually an error here. Probably something there that, right? It's closed probably before. Let me check. That's actually a good. That slash goes there. Is that Allison? No, right?
No.
And it's OIDC. I don't know, tiny things, but it's there. Probably it's not like closing correctly. And okay, show preview. That's the thing. And now it's. Did you do something? No.
Nope.
Did I change something?
No.
Okay.
Well, we are at time. So
Okay.
before we finally wrap up for the day, does anybody have any additional questions at this time? If not, we also are going to open up the shared agenda and notes document and leave that open until the end of the week. If you feel more comfortable asking questions there, or also both of our email addresses are in that document, so you could feel free to write us directly, of course. Yeah, thank you for your time, everybody.
And we're always happy to help anyone that wants to like deploy this locally or test. We know that changing repositories, it's very complicated. Your institution imposes something, but at least you can use Archipelago to plan for your metadata, right? So give it a shot, right? There's documentation. Archipelago is also multilingual. Funciona en cualquier lenguaje. Okay, we also speak German and other languages, and it really works in any language. You can have like multiple languages at the same time. We have tested Tamil and English. You can translate, and everything works seamlessly, right? So that thing, thank you very much for being here. Enjoy the rest of open repositories, and thank you for being so patient.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Take care.